The objection comes up every time. Putting all your passwords in one place is asking for trouble. Because one break-in and somebody has the lock. It sounds like plain common sense, and it is the main reason most people I know are still running 4 passwords with a number stuck on the end. So deal with that first. Until it is dealt with, nothing else here is going to land. I run infrastructure for a living. Carrier portals, a rack of servers, a domain registrar, payment dashboards, hosting accounts, and a long tail of supplier logins. Somewhere north of 200 sets of credentials that all matter in a boring load-bearing way, which means I had the reuse problem worse than most people, because the number of accounts grew a lot faster than my willingness to invent passwords for them. What the company actually stores. The phrase you want is zero knowledge, and for once it means something specific rather than being marketing. When you set up a vault, your master password is not sent anywhere. It goes through a deliberately slow key derivation function on your own device, and what comes out the other side is an encryption key. That key encrypts the vault locally on your machine before anything moves. What gets uploaded is the result, a block of bytes that looks like noise. The company holds the noise. It does not hold the key, and it cannot work backwards from one to the other, which is the whole architecture. So their staff cannot read your vault. A rogue employee cannot read it. A court order served on them produces a file nobody present can open. And an attacker who gets into their storage gets exactly the same file. That is not a promise about their good behavior. It comes down to what they physically hold in the building, the honest version of the risk. There is a real risk here, and it is not the one people name. The weak points are your master password and your device. Both of those sit on your side of the wire. If the master password is short, or if it is one you also used somewhere else, then that encrypted file becomes worth attacking. Somebody can sit offline with a copy and guess at it for as long as they like, with no login form slowing them down. And if there is malware running on your machine, the vault is decrypted in memory the moment you use it. No design in the world saves you from that. So the honest framing is that the vault is fine and you are the soft part, uncomfortable, and also the only version of the problem you can actually do something about. The thing it is really for. Here is where most of the advice goes sideways. It tells you a manager gives you strong passwords and strength is close to irrelevant. A random 20-character string and a decent passphrase are both, in practice, unguessable against any site doing its job. The login form rate limits. After a handful of wrong attempts, it slows down or locks the account. Nobody is sitting at your bank trying combinations. If strength were the whole benefit, this would be a convenience tool and not a security one. The benefit is uniqueness. A different password on every site, which is something no human being can do from memory past about 6 accounts. And uniqueness matters because of one specific attack, which I want to describe properly, because it is the one that actually reaches ordinary people. The attack that actually happens. Some company you signed up to in 2018 gets breached. A forum, a food delivery app, a shop you bought one thing from and never went back to. The list of email addresses and passwords ends up circulating. Nobody targeted you in that. You are a line in a file with 4 million other lines in it. Then somebody takes that file and replays it. Every pair gets tried automatically against banks, email providers, exchanges, shopping sites, whatever is on the list this month. That is credential stuffing, and it is the most common way ordinary accounts get taken over. It works because reuse is close to universal. You do not need a clever attack when a decent slice of a 4 million line file will simply open something else. And look at what the attacker had to do. Nothing. They did not break your bank. They logged in. Now put a unique password on every site and run the same attack. The pair from the forum opens the forum. It opens nothing else. That is the product. A breach at one company stays a problem at one company, and the thing stops spreading. It also makes breach news usable. A service you use turns up in the headlines. You change one password and you are done. The bit nobody expects. The part that genuinely surprised me is that autofill turns out to be a defense in its own right, and it works without you doing anything at all. When the manager saves a login, it saves the address that login belongs to. When you land on a page, it checks the address in front of it against what it has stored. If the address does not match, it does not fill. No suggestion, no drop-down, nothing happens. So a page that looks exactly like your bank, served from a domain one character off, gets an empty box. A human looks at that same page and types it in. Every time. The logo is right, the layout is right, the wording is right, and nobody reads addresses carefully at 9 in the evening. The manager only reads the address. It has no opinion whatsoever about the logo, which gives you a habit worth building. When autofill does not offer, stop and look at the address bar instead of typing it in by hand. The empty box is telling you something. The browser one is fine. People expect me to say go and buy a proper manager. I am not going to. The manager built into your browser is a real security product. It generates, it stores encrypted, it syncs, it fills, and it does the address check against reuse, which is the actual problem. It wins outright. The honest gaps are practical rather than cryptographic. It lives inside one ecosystem, so a phone on one platform and a laptop on another gets awkward fast. Sharing a login with a partner is clumsy. And it holds passwords rather than the other things you eventually want somewhere safe, like account numbers and scans of documents. If none of that describes you, use the one you already have and stop reading comparison posts. Someone who moves from reuse to the browser manager has captured most of the benefit that was available. The standalone ones earn their money on sharing, on sync across platforms, on emergency access, and on keeping the vault somewhere your browser vendor is not. Worth noting that a standalone one usually arrives as a browser extension, which is a permission grant of its own and deserves a deliberate decision rather than a reflex. Losing access is the failure that actually happens. In years of watching people use these things, I have seen 0 vaults stolen and several people locked out of their own. That is the direction the risk really runs, and it falls straight out of the design. Because the company cannot read your vault, the company cannot reset your master password. There is no forgot password link that does anything useful. It is the same property that makes the thing safe in the first place. So recovery planning matters more than which product you pick. It is the part of this subject with the worst ratio of importance to attention. Write the master password down, on paper, by hand, in the place you keep your passport. The thing you are guarding against there is your own memory, and paper does not sync itself anywhere. Take an export every few months and put it somewhere offline. Encrypt the file, put it on a drive in a drawer, and keep it off anything facing the internet. It feels wrong to have a copy at all, which is exactly why people skip it and then have nothing when the account is gone. And set up whatever the product calls emergency access, where a person you name can request the vault after a waiting period you choose. If you get hit by a bus, somebody still has to cancel the subscriptions and reach the bank. That last one gets skipped almost universally, and among people I know, it has caused more actual damage than any attacker has. When a manager company gets breached, this has happened, it will happen again. And the useful question is what comes out. The encrypted vaults come out. Those are the noise blocks, and they are only as good as the master password wrapped around them, which is why the length of that one password matters more than the length of anything inside it. The metadata comes out with them, and that is the part worth caring about. The list of site addresses in a vault is often stored unencrypted because the software wants it available quickly, so an attacker can learn which bank you use, which exchange, which registrar, without opening a single entry. That is more than enough to write you a very convincing email. And old vaults come out with old settings. The number of hashing rounds protecting a vault created 8 years ago is usually far below what the same product ships with today, and raising it is a setting almost nobody has ever opened. So if you have had the same vault for years, go and look at the security page once. Raise the iteration count if the option is there. Change the master password to something long. That one afternoon moves an offline attack from feasible to pointless. The part I got wrong. I moved to a manager about 6 years ago and did it in the most confident way possible, which was halfway. Everything ordinary went in. Forums, shopping, newsletters, all the accounts I did not really care about. The important ones I deliberately kept out, because putting my registrar and my bank into a vault owned by a company felt reckless. So those lived in my head, with a system, a base phrase and a variation per site, which felt clever at the time. Then a site I had used that system on turned up in a breach, and I sat there looking at my own pattern written out in plain text. Base phrase, variation, all of it legible. Anybody holding two of those could have generated the rest in a minute. So the accounts I had protected most carefully were carrying the weakest passwords on the whole estate, precisely because I had made them myself. Handmade passwords get reused. That is what a hand is for. It is attached to a memory. The ones I had been lazy about, the random ones the manager generated that I never once looked at, were the only entries that were genuinely fine. What this looks like in practice: do not migrate 200 accounts. People who try quit on day one. Start with email, because every other account you own has a reset link that lands in it. New password, generated, unique, saved. Then anything that holds money. Then the registrar, if you own domains. After that, let it happen by attrition. Every time you log into something, let the manager save it and change the password while you are already sitting on the settings page. 9 months later, you are finished, and it never cost you an afternoon. And run the breach check your manager almost certainly includes once across the whole vault. It would tell you which of your saved passwords have already appeared in a public dump, and the number comes back higher than people expect. The thing to hold on to is small. A company you signed up to once and forgot about should not be holding the key to your email. Unique passwords are what buys you that, and it is the only reason worth doing any of this. More privacy tools tested honestly at theprivacywire.com. Subscribe for privacy advice that is actually